Well, hello, everyone. This is Dr. Sally Good. This is Good Body, Good Brain podcast. And as you know, we've been exploring a lot of different kinds of ways of being in the world. And one of the things we've been talking about in the past couple of weeks is the frequency that's emitted by everything around us, both electronic and in the natural world, as well as ourselves. Because we're just a bunch of electrons if we really come down to it. So today I have with me on this podcast someone who really can tell you how stress can kill you. And she also can tell you how everything really is frequency. I'm going to welcome to the podcast today, Amy McGraw. She is the founder of the Wi-Fi Detox. And we met a while back. And so now she's got this wonderful program helping people understand what's going on with their bodies in terms of digital toxification as well as the environment, etc. So welcome, Amy. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Dr. Sally. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be a part of your podcast and to teach others about how everything's frequency and how we are affected by man-made frequencies, not just our own.
And also, too, there was a time period where you really had to explore how they were affecting your own health.
Yes. So I was actually very sick for about 5 years. My health just steadily declined. I joke around and tell everyone I had nice legs and abs for about a week because I was on a weight loss journey and I lost about 50 pounds. And then almost right after that, I felt like my legs were on fire. I felt like I was being electrocuted all the times. My muscles got incredibly weak. I ended up walking with a cane. Like, that's how severe it progressed, is to where after that 5 years, I was walking with a cane. I couldn't even get upset about the fact that we thought that I was dying, because if I would cry or get too emotional, my face muscles would actually seize up to where, like, I would just get stuck and my face looked like it was melting and I would get stuck. I couldn't chew food too fast because everything would seize up and no one knew what was wrong. I did every kind of test you can think of. I had giant long needles put into me and electricity put into the needles and just everything that we were trying to figure out. We thought I might have a brain tumor. I might have MS, just all of these things. But there was never really anything concrete. And it wasn't until we moved to Texas. And so here's a quick side note. My husband builds cell phone towers, which is incredibly ironic. So he used to always joke with me because I was so full of electricity that I should be grounded like the cell phone towers. But I just took it as a joke, right? I didn't take him seriously until we moved to Texas and we were outside doing yard work. And for those who don't know, grounding is literally just the act of just bare skin contact with the earth. Some people call it earthing too, but I like to call it grounding just because that's what we're doing. We're grounding ourselves.
Well, we are.
Yeah. So I grounded. I was just, he was cutting the grass. I was just sitting there hanging out, and it made my mood feel good. And at that moment we thought that I was going to be in a wheelchair by the time I turned 40 and dead by the time I was 45. Like, that was the progression of how fast everything was going. So when you're in a moment where you literally think you're dying, anything to help your mood, to put you in a good mood, you will take it. So I just started eating my lunch outside just to lift my spirits. And within 1 week of grounding, I had this really, really intense trauma release from pent up stress and emotions from a long time ago. And my symptoms went away. And it was so unusual, but at the same time, it kind of wasn't, because I have done other health healing modalities that have helped a little bit, and then my symptoms would eventually come back. So fast forward to a few weeks later, we were in IKEA. And if you're familiar with IKEA, it's this giant metal frame building and metal amplifies, EMFs. So we're in there and my symptoms started coming back. And so my husband said, do you want to go outside real quick and ground and I'll grab your cell phone. Because if you're familiar with IKEA, you walk around the showroom and you write down the numbers to everything that you want. And then at the very end, you go and like pick everything out and check out. So we grabbed our phone to take pictures of everything that we wanted. And I grabbed some plants so that I could ground. But as soon as I walked out of the building, as soon as I walked out of IKEA, I felt as if I had a sheet over me, like I was a ghost for Halloween, and someone just pulled it off of me. And I knew that I was sensitive to our technology. I just started piecing it back together, that these electrical sensations that I thought were coming from me and that I'm electrocuting everything, they were actually, in a way, coming from our devices. And so that sent me down the rabbit hole of discovery that, like you said earlier, everything's frequency. We're all just a bunch of electrons and protons and neutrons. That's it. Whenever you think about it, we are energy, we're frequency, we're vibration. That's it.
Well, also too, I think you may have actually been storing some of these electrons and everything in your body system because of the way you felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we store everything. We store our stress, and we as humans, it's our natural response to stress, right? Over everything. Think about how many times throughout the day we're like, oh my gosh, I should have done this. Oh my gosh, I'm running out of milk. Oh my gosh. And it's just these little stressors that we just don't think of, as being real damaging. But then we also have these major stressors in our lives that some of us, everybody experiences traumas. Everyone, some are good, some are bad, some are worse. Everybody's got varying degrees, but we all go through it. We all experience it. And I used to call them my black holes. So it was these moments that I knew were there. I just never looked at it, nor did I care to want to. And apparently my body was like, that's not how we do things. You need to look at this and address it, and then it'll be gone. And so that's what I did. And now I'm training for a triathlon in May.
Wow.
The difference from walking with a cane.
Yeah, those black holes really, I call them landmine mines, where they're actually up there. You don't know you have them really until you step on one. And when you step on one, the reactivity is like way off the chart. Like you might be talking to somebody in the grocery store and somebody comes by and just says one little thing. And that one little thing sends you like scaling up to almost to a 10 level of stress, and you don't know why. Whenever that happens, you've got a landmine up there in your mind. So you have to go in there and diffuse it. And there's a whole bunch of them. And life is about, as we get through these different stages, people say, oh, I just can't wait till I get through this. I can't wait till I finish all this mess. I said, the mess is always there and it never stops. You're peeling that onion for as long as you live. So you might as well find a mechanism, a way that you can enjoy the ride, because it's going to be there.
Yeah. And I like how you said, just talking to someone in the grocery store can trigger one of the landmines, because another thing that can trigger these landmines is our technology. Think about it in this way. How many times have you heard a song on the radio and it just automatically transported you back in time? Or you're watching a commercial and it's sad and you're bawling crying and you're like, I don't even know these people. It's a commercial for toilet paper, like just no reason. But it's these things that can trigger these landmines, but they're there and they can be scary. Black holes, it's a very scary place, right? But they're there for a reason. They're there so that we can go through it, so that we can evolve. We're humans. We're constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. For someone to say, well, I'm the same person that I have been my whole life. I haven't changed since I was a kid. Well, that's not what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to change. You're not supposed to be the same person that you were when you were a kid. So much so to where our cells literally die and are regenerated constantly, to where we are literally physically not the same person than we were last week. Much less
true.
20 years ago.
True.
Yeah,
very true. And we're built to regenerate to, there's this thing called zombie cells. There's cells that are actually dead, but they're still floating around our body systems. And there's actually a detoxification for zombie cells. When you get older, those kind of things happen. So there's all kind of people who are studying all these different kind of cells that just kind of linger around. But to reinvent yourself is basically what you really do and we're talking about, if we look at energy, the mitochondria that's in the cell, that's our energy nucleus, that's our powerhouse. And when we take good care of that by protecting ourselves from all these outside things, then we're just more vibrant, more healthy. People say, and it got to be so woo-woo that people stopped saying it, but your vibration does change. It is a measurable entity.
Yeah, it definitely does. And our bodies are designed to heal. That's why someone can have so many different sicknesses and illnesses and just, I mean, everything seems to be wrong with them and they're still alive. That's why someone can become so morbidly obese to where they can't even get out of bed and they can barely even move, but their bodies are still alive. Because our bodies, we don't want to die. Our bodies are designed to keep us alive for as absolutely long as possible, which means that we heal ourselves from everything, which is why if you get a broken bone, you don't have to put it in a cast. It will heal. It might not be perfect and straight.
It might not look very pretty, but it's still going to heal.
Yeah, it won't be pretty, but it'll still heal. It'll heal itself. You cut yourself, you don't have that cut for the rest of your life. You know, you heal it. It's it's just how our bodies are designed. And that's not just for our physical body. I think we're so used to kind of this separation between our physical body and our spiritual body or our mental body. I say our mental body, our mental and our brain, it's two different things. You know, your mind and your brain are two different things. The brain is the physical, the mind is the spiritual. And we have this disconnection between everything. And we just need to reconnect it, reconnect ourselves with ourselves, reconnect ourselves with nature, which is really important to do, especially the more tech that we have around us. 5G, the G just means generation. The fourth G was the fourth generation, 5G's fifth generation. There's going to be a 6G. There's going to be a 7G. There's just so that we're just going to keep evolving. Technology is going to continue to evolve. So we have to learn how to evolve with it. And a lot of it is, in a way, disconnecting from tech and realigning with ourselves and realigning with nature. So
yes, you bring up two really important points. I'm not a race car buff, but I grew up in a part of the world where racing was really a really big deal. My brother used to strip down cars and race, so it was a really big deal. So I was just listening to the broadcast from the Daytona 500. The broadcast kept breaking up because so many people were there using their cell phones. We're talking 100,000 people in the immediate environment, and then outside the stadium were people in their campers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we have all the broadcast media who are trying to broadcast it out into TV land and radio land and those kinds of things. And so the signal would actually stop. And this is so unusual for a big outlet, one of the majors, to have this happen. But it was the sheer force of everyone using their cell phone at the same time. If anybody had any kind of sensitivity to technology at that time, plus you're being assaulted by the excruciating level of sound, we have engines roaring, we have thunderbirds going over the sky, we have people cheering, we have all those kinds of things going on at the same time. I would imagine that later people, after it was over, actually felt sick because it was so powerful. And also the second thing I'm going to talk about is it's through solitude, and I mean connecting with yourself and nature, because we're creatures, we're natural beings, that we make our biggest breakthroughs. because when we're in the company of other humans, we are just mirrors and sounding boards. We're always adapting what we do, say, think, feel, move, whatever,
Yeah.
based on whoever's in your environment. It's an unconscious mirroring. So to really, really get to whatever's in the landmine, we need to get away from all the other stuff and spend some time with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why grounding is so great, because you can go outside by yourself in the backyard and just sit underneath a tree, and just be with nature. And then you'll have whatever gets downloaded to you and whatever gets, pushed away from you. And it's just really a beautiful moment. And that's why I love the whale music so much. So we're going to talk a little bit about the whale music too.
Mhm.
But the whales, so the frequency of whale music, their sounds, their songs, is
Mhm.
actually the same frequency as our cries, which is why it's so beneficial, because it's literally the
Mhm.
same frequency that's healing. And so what I tell people, if you can't go outside because it's freezing cold, I get that. You don't want to try to ground when it's snowing, but you can
Mhm.
just fill yourself a nice hot bath, turn on some whale music, make it dark, light some candles, and you will either start cracking up laughing, you will start bawling crying, you will do
Mhm.
whatever, you will relax, but it'll come out of you. And it's just this wonderful, wonderful grounding experience. And you're by yourself in your bathtub and no one's
Mhm.
around
Mhm.
to judge you or to, someone might come in if they hear you crying, they might knock and ask if you're okay. But, otherwise you're to yourself.
Yes, and if you're out in a place, not a cold place, I don't like doing these kind of things where it's cold. You can actually start to float, and that feeling of floating feels like that your boundaries that are like the ends of our fingers all have sort of disappeared, and we're
Mm,
actually diffuse. We have become part of the environment. And when we become part of the environment and we're not self, we're other self, then that's when we can really connect. And that takes a little bit of practice,
yeah.
some mindfulness work, gratitude, meditation, lots of ways to get there, Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, lots of ways to get there. But it's a gift that you give yourself that helps you stay healthy much longer.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd like to kind of rewind and talk for a second about everyone being online at the Daytona 500 and how it messed up the frequencies. So that
Mhm.
I don't know if you've ever heard, sometimes like a website will get shut down just real quick, like they're having so much. That's what it is so much traffic is coming into
Traffic.
that website
Mhm.
so that it's bogging it down. So that actually happens with our bodies. So the way that I like to describe it to everyone, most young people won't understand this, but whenever we had radios and not phones, we used to change the knob to the station.
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
between the stations, there was that staticky sound. And you'd have
Mhm.
to hurry up and get to the other station, or it was just really annoying. Well, that static sound is interference from the different stations. It's the different frequencies that are kind of
Mhm.
interfering with each other. Another thing that you might recognize is if you've ever heard someone speaking on stage or been at a concert and the person with the microphone gets too close to the speaker, and then you hear that really, really loud pitch, that's
Mhm.
electrical interference as well. So that
Yes.
happens with the different electronic devices, but it also happens with us. Except we don't have that static sound or anything like that. Our electrical interference shows up as pain. And so my
Mhm.
guess is a lot of people from that event, if they were to go home, they might experience things like headaches. They might have
Stomachache.
tightness from up in their traps and their
Mhm.
shoulders, headaches. They might have upset stomachs, and they might be blaming it on the hot dogs that they ate at the event
Yeah.
and not
Mhm.
thinking that it's the fact that they're just overloaded from everyone's tech. And you don't have to be at the Daytona 500 to have that effect. Think about every time you log onto your computer. For me,
Mhm.
I have at least 20 different names that pop up with Wi-Fi that I have the option to sync up to. That's everyone's Wi-Fi that you're getting. That's everyone's frequencies coming at you.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes, and as you probably know, I live out in the country. I'm out here with about 7 or 8 acres. I do rescue dogs who are grounders. They're actually physical grounders. When you put your hand on a dog, two things happen. Your blood pressure goes down, and so does theirs. So they're helping you connect because they've got four paws on the ground. Can you imagine how much better off they are than we are? The four paw, I call them the four pawed people. They're out there and they're doing their thing. They come in the house, and when I touch them, I can feel the sort of like, oh, oh, that's nice. That's really
Yeah.
nice. And the latest article in Neuroscience News today is, we're speaking to the choir here. They have found that the release of cortisol has become so predominant with so many people constantly that it's causing so much stress in our environment because we're not accessing the path of our vagus nerve to get to our parasympathetic system, which is rest and digest. And it also interferes with the gut brain axis and also heart axis because heart is pure electrons. It's just muscle creating electrons. That's how we can beat. Hence, that's why we used electricity to get us back to alive. When you think about the whole thing, it sort of makes sense, doesn't it?
That's what I tell everyone. I say, if we die and some guy dressed in white who thinks he's God, literally Frankenstein's us back to existence. And that's what that is. It's electricity starting up our hearts again because we are electronic. We're our own electronic device.
We're walking little towers, just going to place to place. That's why when you walk into a room, and depending on your level of sensitivity, there's going to be people in that room that you'll be so attracted to. And then conversely, there's people that give you this kind of uneasy, kind of like, I get this like a little bubbling in my gut. When I used to do a lot of clinical practice, if a borderline personality walked into my office, I would feel it like in 2 minutes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Because of the incongruency that was going on with the patient.
Yeah.
So that incongruency that you can feel in another human causes you to back off. That's our little helper. And all these limiting beliefs, we call them, they're there for a purpose. They tried to save us when we were small or at some point in time. And I hate to call them limiting because they did something really good for us at the time that they were created. And now we don't need them so much, and we have to kind of make peace with them and tell them, you did a good job. Hey, you don't have to work so hard anymore. This other person in the committee is in charge now.
It's true. You do kind of have to do that because I think about just moments from whenever I was younger that at the time I didn't think had any effect. Like people making fun of my pants. I would wear my great aunt's clothes from the 70s and I didn't care what anybody said. I rocked them. I loved them. Right?
They were cool.
Never affected me. But as an adult, I've toned down the way that I've dressed. Because of that, and I never put that together until an adult. And it's like, whenever I was sick, I finally had that switch and I said, you know what? I want to wear all these clothes. I'm the one that tells myself that I could never pull it off, or I frick that. I'm the one telling myself I'm going to wear sparkles and feathers and whatever's fun. You don't realize how these things are affecting us, but our brains are like sponges. They're just absorbing everything, and they're absorbing things that we don't even know that they're absorbing. And I think a lot of times it's those things that are affecting us because we don't know it's being absorbed. So we don't realize it's affecting us until years later. And you do have to make that conscious effort. You have to make the effort. You have to make the shift. You can't beat yourself up over it, which we love to do. We love to beat ourselves up. You give yourself credit for going through the hard thing. Like I have, and I know everybody has their trauma, but when you think about it's awful. And you're like, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe people could do this. I can't believe it happened. It happened and it happened. And be grateful that you got through it, and you got through
And you're
it, and
alive.
you're who, yeah. And not only that, like, you're who you are today because of that. So, I mean, if you like who you are today, which everyone should, then you can kind
Yes.
of thank those things for happening.
Mhm. Yeah. Don't talk bad to yourself, because yourself internalizes it. Your brain,
Yeah.
if you say, "Oh my gosh, I am so broke," okay, I'm going to say cancel right now because I don't want that. I don't want that thought in my head. Instead, you say, "Hey, tomorrow something may disappear, and I'm going to be so grateful to wherever it came from, and it's going to solve this problem that I'm in now." And so you put that out, and you bring up another really good point. We as humans are so arrogant that we think we know what's going on in our worlds. Hello, we have this wonderful thing called the reticular activating system, or RAS for short. We're just beginning to talk about it, which filters all the stimuli that come into our little meager brains, because our brains cannot tolerate seeing every bit of packet of information that's all around us. So it protects us. It only shows us this part of the world. Now, when we sometimes make a little shift in our head and say, "Oh, my someone told me about maybe this part of the world that I might want to explore. So I'm going to like sit with this a while, and I'm going to see if I can like begin to incorporate this into my worlds." And then the reticular activating system has to shift, and it opens up a little bit over here, like a little window, like a little sliver, and you go, "Oh, I see that." For just a moment.
Yeah.
I used to dialogue with an electrical engineer when I lived in San Francisco. We'd have these really in-depth discussions. You know, we didn't know whether it was any of it was true, but we called it looking around the corner. We'd get really, really close to seeing it, and we'd look around the corner, but by the time we looked around the corner, it had vanished. So that was our reticular activating system trying to keep us in the same sort of plane and trying to protect us. But the older you get, the more you realize that there's so much more there. And this is the same with the electronic aspect of ourself, our bioenergetic self. That's why we have non-local communication. Some people call it prayer. It's like human Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I know some people, you referred to it as downloading, and I've heard other
Mhm.
people refer to it as downloading, and that's
Mhm.
literally exactly what it feels like. It's exactly what it is, because you're not thinking about absolutely anything, and then just like, you open up your inbox and all of a sudden an email comes in, you're
Mhm.
just sitting there not thinking of anything, and just all of a sudden something is downloaded to you to where it's like, oh, well, maybe. And I always tell people, I say, people always question, who am I? Who am I? Where did we
Mhm.
come from? Why am I here? And I say, that's the wrong question we should be asking. What we
Right.
should be asking are, what are our thoughts? Where do our thoughts come from? Who are they? Right?
Yes. 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 And that wonderful book that's been around over 100 years, James Allen's "As a Man Thinketh, and So a Woman Thinketh." Uh, it really was the beginning of someone who was from the Western world. I mean, if you look at Ayurvedic medicine, et cetera, they've been doing this for a long time. From the Western world, that actually posited the thought that thoughts actually
Yeah.
create everything, including who we are, where we are, what we're doing, everything.
Yeah.
We are creators of our own
Yeah.
reality. And
Yeah.
it is the hardest thing to get someone to see when they're in a bad place. When they're in a good place, they'll say, "Oh yeah, I got this. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got this. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting this going." When you're in a bad place and you think, I'm not doing this to myself. I didn't make myself sick. No, you
Yeah.
didn't really. But being in that place, in physical place where the things around you got you sick, Or sometimes it's the thoughts that get us sick, that let us
Yeah.
stay there. It's the story we tell.
Yeah. And that was the case
And
with me.
mhm,
So my birthday was February 7th. I turned 41 and I had like a complete meltdown. And I was telling my husband, I said, I wonder if it's because we thought that I would be dead by now, that I kind of, a piece of me had to die a little bit, you know?
mhm,
I was just so upset at the fact that I am the one who is killing myself. Like, that's a horrible thing.
mhm,
Like it wasn't this outside source. It was me beating myself up so much over every little thing, you know, and not giving myself credit for any of the things that I had done or accomplished or set out to do. And it was all of that beating myself up that just like expressed itself and it pushed itself out so much so. Dr. Sally, I couldn't even wear most clothing. I was in
'cause it
so
was,
much pain. I was in
yes,
so
your
much
skin
pain.
was on
Bra
fire.
strap, my skin. My husband used to joke around and call me Ric Flair. If you know, if you've ever watched
I know,
wrestling,
yes.
he
I'm
was a
from South
wrestler that
Carolina.
had these really
Yeah,
these
yeah,
bathrobes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm from South Carolina. I know who Ric Flair is.
So he called me Ric Flair. And so I bought all these really fancy bathrobes with feathers all over them because that's what I could wear. And that's what got me into wanting to dress fun and being like, frick this, who am I to tell me I can't do that? And it's
Mhm,
crazy. It still is so mind boggling to think. I mean, I have a cane in our like literally, you could have a conversation with me. And if I were to get upset, like, it's not just that I'm making a frown on my face. My eyelids, the bottoms of my eyelids would start drooping. My whole face would start sagging. My pectoral muscle would come up into my chest, my shoulder. I mean, you could watch it happen. Like, you could be in
mhm,
front of me. I was on the phone with one of my friends and I started crying and she started freaking out because she'd never seen it. She's like, I've just never seen it. It's just crazy. You could literally watch these things happening. And so obviously there's got to be an outside source, right? No, no, there doesn't
mm.
have to be an outside source. There can be an inside source that causes it. And a lot of times, this is my discovery. I think 95% of the time, and it's probably a greater number, that it is those inside sources that are causing the outside pains and illnesses. So it's addressing that, and then the
Yes.
healing can begin.
And this is, there's people listening to this and they're going to say, these women are talking like this crazy woo woo stuff. Like, I don't know what the heck they're talking about. Honestly, this is studied neuroscience that's just becoming to light. There's actually a document from 25, 30 years ago written by the CIA. They studied everything that had to do with mind body connection, NLP, hypnosis, um, giving people hallucinogenics to open up that piece of themselves. And it's just been actually released to the public. And if you go on to any Google site and you type in CIA pattern, it'll come up. It's about 30 pages long.
Oh wow, interesting. Yeah, I know that
Yes.
they had some research that they were doing on like telepathy and astral projection and things like that, and just how our mind works and just how
Mhm.
powerful our minds are. But I want to say to
Yes.
the people who are listening to this and thinking that it's crazy, first of all, yes, it definitely sounds it definitely sounds insane. Absolutely. I agree. It definitely sounds crazy. But when you really think about it, and when you really think about the fact that I'm not me, I'm frequency, it makes sense that my frequency would be disrupted because you can see it in anything. You can do it if like I was saying with the radio, you can see how the frequency can get disrupted. And there was something else that I wanted to say on that, but I totally forgot. So we'll have to circle back to
Okay.
it.
I'm going to tell you about this experiment. It was done a long time ago, but I just started talking about it recently to several people who love plants and flowers and all these kinds of things, and they had never heard of it because most of them are in their 30s, so maybe that's what it is. But the wonderful experiment where they put three separate plants that were in pots on a table and they wired them up to actually measure the frequencies that these, because when a plant heals, the frequency, like if you pluck off a leaf, first of all, the frequency starts to like really, really almost like a stutter. It's like the plant says, ouch. So they had all these plants hooked up to frequency so they could really see, what was going on with them. And they were well-tended plants. So they had this one gentleman come in, and he just looked at the plants, and he chose one. He pulled it out of its pot, threw it on the ground, and stepped on it. Now, all these other two plants, you're just seeing like, sort of like, when you see the EKGs and you see somebody tell a lie, they were just going crazy, just going nuts.
Yeah.
So then he left, and then someone else comes in who and the plants don't do any reaction to it, but they pick up the poor little plant that's on the ground, and they put it back in its pot and try to help it a little bit, and they go down through the other door. And then another single person comes in and looks at the plants, and the plants are just kind of doing their thing, no big frequency shift. Then guess who opens the door? The murderer. The murderer comes back in, and those plants go nuts. They are just like doing their vibration frequency all over the place because they recognize the energy of that person that killed or tried to kill one of their friends that was on the table. Now, if plants can do this, just think about what we're doing all the time, but we're so it's basically called it's called the controlled trance, where we go through life where we're just in a trance state. We even drive to work and we can't even remember getting there. Yeah. We are in a trance. And when people start to wake up and sort of look at, 5 years happened, I was at this company, what was I doing?
Yeah.
It's scary. So frequencies can hurt us. They also can wake us up to new things that are happening all around us all the time that we aren't noticing, or we've got it filtered by our RAS system.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you brought up that study, because I don't know if it was the same study, but I actually saw something that was similar, except the plants were in different rooms. And in one of the tests, and so the person was on the opposite side of the room and was like chopping up lettuce and stuff like with a knife, and the other plants were just freaking out, like they did not like it. And then another thing that they did was they took a heat source and put it underneath the leaves so that the leaf could feel the heat, like it was going to catch on fire. And they said that a lot of the nutrients that were within the leaf automatically got pulled back into the stem, and that they were freaking out like that, like almost as if they were crying. So yeah, it's definitely an incredible study. What I wanted to say earlier, with anybody who thinks that this is crazy, I wanted to tell the stories of a few other people just so that they can kind of know that it's not just me. So there's a gentleman that I know who, in his 20s, he was a bodybuilder, was in school, had all these wonderful things happening. And in his 20s, he started to develop arthritis, really, really, really bad arthritis. And over a span of 18 years, his body just slowly started crumpling and deteriorating. And he's lost all of the cartilage in his feet and his hands. He was sick, really, really sick. Doctors could not heal him, and he was just trying everything. So he ended up going to India for this healing, and he thought that he would be in like a healing thing, and they'd be doing some stuff, and all that he did was talk. He just talked for about a week, and the person that he was talking to, who was helping him, explained to him that he feels like he is responsible for everyone in the world. And he was like, well, that doesn't really make sense. He's like, I care about people, but I don't feel like I'm responsible for all of them. And he's like, no, but everything that you've been saying, you do. You put that responsibility, you put their responsibility on you. And so he said, so all I have to do is say that I'd no longer take the responsibility of other people and I'll be cured. And he said, yeah, pretty much. And he said, absolutely nothing happened. But the next day he woke up and he was not in pain. That's incredible. And so now he works in the energy healing realm as well. And someone that he was working with, she gets headaches. She had migraines from the time that she was 6 years old. Horrible, horrible migraines. If anyone has ever had a migraine, you know that a migraine will set you back. Sometimes the whole day, sometimes days, depending on how bad you get them. Well, what they discovered was that when she was a small child, her dad used to always say that resting is lazy. If you're not doing anything, if you're not busy, that you're lazy. So her little 6-year-old mind said, well, in order for me to rest, I have to have a reason to rest. And that's when she started getting migraines. And as soon as she made the connection and accepted it and said, okay, let's move forward, she no longer gets migraines.
Yes.
That's incredible.
She stepped out of the story.
It's completely crazy sounding, but and a lot of people listening goes, oh, that's not me. That couldn't happen to me. But if it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And if it can happen to these people, it can happen to anyone. You know, it's not just, we're not just making this up.
Yeah.
We thought it was just as crazy too.
Actually, if a lot of this has been put into a couple of books, forgive me, author of this book that I can't remember your name, but the body code, the emotion code, it's either MD or a psychologist based in Utah, and he actually has a certification for his program where he helps people who have intractable diseases that modern medicine can't find a cure for. He takes them through a process, and by the end of the process, they've got it figured out. One of my friends got certified in his program, and she's in London, and it's called Untangled Healing. And she works with people that have been sick like 20, 30 years, sometimes even bedridden. And over a course of maybe 10, 12 weeks, as she peels that onion and they get down to the core of why this started in the first place, like the little girl having a migraine so she could rest, they actually reverse. Now, the person with arthritis, I know him. He still has some degenerative things in his hands because his bones haven't fully come back to life, so to speak. But, you know, over time, there's an element of healing within even our bones, even if they get misshapen from rheumatoid arthritis or any other kinds of arthritis. So, yes, it can be done. And I've seen it happen time after time after time, especially when I meet with people and I say, they're telling me what all the stuff that's going wrong. And I ask them to tell me what's going right. And they don't have very many answers. I said, okay, you've just programmed your brain. Your brain has just heard you say all these bad things, and it totally believes it because it has no filter in terms of truth or fiction. So you've just told your brain that you're sick because of this. When you start telling your brain that you're getting better and you start shifting, your brain will create or bring in the people into your life that will help you get there.
Yeah, that's right. Because whatever we tell our brain, our mind is listening, right? And our mind is our spiritual body. And our spiritual body wants to give our physical body everything that it asks for. And like you were saying, it doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, between yes and no, between good and bad. It just knows what you're asking. So if you keep saying, I want to get out of debt, your brain just hears debt. And it's like, oh, your mind is like, oh, let's bring debt. Yay. So let's cancel that real quick. That's not, but it's true.
Let's just cancel that really quick.
Cancel that.
The other thing that,
wealth
that
abundance,
is so fascinating is, you know, there's people who go around. I love poking at these people because they don't know that they're actually not doing what they need to be doing to get to be where they are. They'll say, I'm praying for abundance. I'm saying I'm an abundant being. I'm making affirmations and whatever. And so I said, well, yeah, if you find $1 in the parking lot, is that abundance? And they said, well, I guess so. I didn't have $1 before. I said, well, maybe the universe said, okay, well, I did it. I'm done. But if you say, by this time, I am going to be making at least $10,000 a month, and I will be doing it by doing this, then if your brain starts to figure out, like it tells you, okay, hey, you got to get up earlier in the morning because there's tasks that have to be done. You don't get this by not working. You get this by your brain creating the circumstances that makes you want to do that one thing that makes that shifts that other one thing. And finally, you look around and you're making $10,000 a month.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's just about making the connection. And like you said, you have to, it's kind of like if anyone's familiar with like using AI or like the more you input to it, the more it has and the more it's able to respond. If you just type in one sentence, you'll get a program, but it won't be exactly what you want. But if you type in a story, a whole page full of information, then whatever you get back it's going to be closer to what it is that you're asking for because of the detail.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And all this is looping back around to the bioenergetics of everything around us. And, I tell people, like, look, you see that table over there? Do you think that's a solid thing? Hello, it isn't. It's just a bunch of molecules vibrating. There's actually holes between them, because if it were solid, we would be in a black hole.
Yeah. And it's funny because we learned that in school. I remember learning about it in school. Nothing's solid, everything's real. But you just kind of dismiss it as something that you learn in school, and you don't really think that it applies to you. You just, well, it's that table and that chair. No, but it's also you. Like you said earlier, we're just a whole bunch of electrons just floating around. We're just in in our little space, and that's it. But you get rid of us, we're still there. That's why so many people have these connections with the afterlife. Your spirit is still here. Energy, we also learned this in school. You cannot create or destroy energy. It is the same, right? And so when someone passes on, their meat and bones are gone, but that spiritual body, that mind is still there. And that's why you have people who they can talk to spirits, or they feel the energies, or they get, they have guidance from that. It's because that energy is still there.
Or they can talk to the living who are 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
They can actually get the vibe. The person who's 3,000 miles away might not have that kind of gift, but the person who's receiving that vibe can actually put it into words.
Yeah. That's why twins are such an interesting study, because a lot of times twins can be in completely opposite sides of the world, and something will happen to one twin and the other twin will automatically know what happened. And that's just a phenomenon that like we can really only relate to with twins, but it happens to all of us. It really does.
Yeah. It used to happen with my mother. I lived in Hawaii and she lived in South Carolina. Now, every now and then she'd send me a package. We had a department store. We had a lot of clothes and all that kind of stuff. She loved clothes. In Hawaii, you don't need that so much. Not a big deal, as long as you got a bathing suit and something to go windsurfing with. So she would send me a package, and in the package would be, and maybe I hadn't seen her in a couple of years. She didn't ask me how much I weighed. She didn't ask me any of those things. Those clothes she sent would fit me absolutely perfectly. I had no idea how she did it. No idea how she did it. If occasionally I didn't get sick very much, but if occasionally I got a little cold or cough or something like that, she'd call me on the phone. She said, "What's wrong with you?"
I love that.
I'd say,
I love
well,
that.
there's not really anything wrong with me. I just caught a little cold. It got down all the way to 55 in Hawaii, and we all got we had to start wearing sweaters.
Nobody owns a sweater in Hawaii.
So I actually gave her a book later about the serendipity that occurs when you're synchronized with somebody else. And she read it and she said, wow, that's so interesting. I never even thought about that, because she and her mother used to do the same thing. And I think there's generational of people who can actually do like some ancestral healing, because this stuff follows us around. We you know, when our body dies, that's not it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to think about these things, and again, people are going to say, oh, that doesn't happen, that's not really true. But there's been too many, um, I'll call hard science experiments that would say it is true.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So we are
ancestral.
frequency.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Definitely. And if you think about ancestral stuff going on, ancestral traumas, a modern word for that likes to be thrown around is genetic, right? Oh, it's genetic. Oh, it's genetic. Oh, it's hereditary. Everyone in your family had it, so that means you will too. That's the word that we're used to hearing. So I think whenever we say it's ancestral, it just kind of puts it on this other level where people are like, that's woo woo, but we don't understand what that is. But it's really the same thing. You know, if
Mhm.
somebody has it, it's passed down to you and to your kid and to everyone until you cut it and change it, you know?
Right. And you change the thought.
Yeah.
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 I used to do a lot of work with people who are mentally ill, but also they didn't take very good care of their bodies. And by just making little shifts in like clean eating, helping them feel better about taking care of themselves, it changed to their self worth. It increased their self esteem. Anxiety lifted. They felt less depressed. All these little things happen. And when someone tells me diabetes runs in my family, I said, why do you think that is? Because you all eat the same crappy foods. You don't exercise and you don't take care
Yeah.
of yourselves. So that's what runs in your family. And all you have to do is go to some of these all you can eat buffets. I can't even go anymore. It's so disturbing when I see people waddle in there with children that look fairly normal that are 5 and 6 years old, and I can say, "Hey, poor little kid, please don't end up like your mom or dad."
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
they think that this is the good life, but there's something beyond that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. It's just a matter of taking care of yourself. I think the reason why it gets passed down is because as humans, we're social creatures and we put ourselves on the back burner like that so easy. We dismiss ourselves because someone else is in need. And let me put my
Mhm.
energy into helping this other person who needs me. And so as parents, that's just what we're doing, and we're just
Mhm.
like, let me put all of my energy into helping you and not thinking of putting energy into helping themselves, and that's what causes all of this stuff is when you don't do that. We're social, but we also have to learn how to be a little bit of a hermit.
Yes, and we do need time to recharge, especially us introverts. I'm a introvert disguised as an extrovert. I tell people, I said, look, you put me on a stage and I light up. But when I need to recharge, it is in the country with the critters.
Yeah.
I'm no parties, no whatevers. No, I will recharge with the critters, and then I'll be ready to go back into the real world again. But
Yeah.
that's how I recharge. I'm walking barefoot,
Yeah.
out in the grass.
Yeah. You're
Have to be a little
literally.
careful and take. Yeah, because we got snakes, but we know how to take care of them too. But anyway, so yes, recharging
Yeah.
and just having people think about this thought for a moment that you brought up at the beginning, that everything is frequency. We are all a bunch of bioenergetic things just floating through the universe, sometimes flying through the universe. And we can make our lives so much better by just acknowledging that our thoughts create a particular kind of story, and that story creates an
Yeah.
action that's sometimes redundant, and sometimes it actually is a good story that propels us into whatever our next adventure is. We
Yeah.
get another download about something. I call them
Yeah.
angel whispers. When you're in that kind of still, intuitive kind of state, you're not thinking about much, and all of a sudden this thing pops into your head. You have to catch it, because if you take your mind off it for a second, it's like, what did that? What was that?
Yeah.
We have to honor those thoughts with actions, because they are gifts and they're coming to us as a gift. So we need to honor those and either write them down or think about that as an action step, because they're here to help us.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so easy to, when you're sick and when you're in pain and when you're hurting, it's so easy to get stuck in the thought of, I'm sick, I'm in pain, I'm hurting. It's so much easier to get stuck in that loop. But it's so important for you to retrain yourself and to just don't get mad at yourself for saying that, but just say, I'm healthy. I will continue to work towards my health until I am healthy, and just put yourself into that mindset instead. What mindset would you rather be in? The one that makes you sad, or the one that puts you in a good mood? And a lot of times we don't think that we can be in a good mood because of everything that's going on. We might think it's like wrong of us to be in a good mood, especially if you're dealing with something difficult that's happening for another family member, that they're sick and they're going through it, but you're watching it. So you're experiencing it too from your side. And sometimes they think, well, I'm not allowed to be happy because this person is in pain. And it's like, no, you both have to be happy, and your happiness and your good mood will feed into that person who
Yes.
is in pain. Whereas your worry and your fear for them is also feeding into that person who's in pain.
Yes, your mood actually lifts their mood. If you met those people, when they walk into a room, they're like happy-go-lucky, and I want to go hang with this person. They're having a lot of fun. You're attracted by them, and you attract them also too, because you're like kindred spirits. And the people around sometimes don't get it. I don't know about this. If I actually feel happy, should I express that because other people aren't happy? No, by raising our own levels, what do we call it, super consciousness, frequency, or whatever, we raise the levels. It's like, dolphins in the ocean, and we're talking about whales. The dolphins swim out and help the one that's sick, or maybe even caught in a net, and they try to get the fisher person to come out and get them out of their net. And so, yes, like dolphins, we can lift each other, because the whole tide raises all the boats. Yeah. When the tide is coming in, it's going to raise up that boat, and you can actually help being part of that tide with your own energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I saw a woman in the locker room at the gym one night. It's late. I'm working out, about to leave, and she was just bawling, crying, just sitting on the bench, bawling, crying. And I just went up to her and gave her a hug. I just said, I'm not weird or nothing. And I just gave her this big bear hug. I said, you just need a hug. And she just started bawling, crying even more, and was like, that's exactly what I needed. I said, you can talk about it to me if you want. I said, I'm a stranger, but I don't judge. And she's like, no, I don't think I need to talk about it. I just really needed a hug. And she stopped crying. That was all that she needed. I've never seen her since then. So I haven't been like, how you doing? But one day I'll run into her. I'll throw that energy out there.
Yes, you may. Yes, probably you will. So yes, we've talked about a lot of stuff, and there's still the people out there listening to them saying that those two women are nuts. But I challenge you to go look at some scientific studies and go listen to people who do these studies all the time on YouTube, like Andrew Huberman, Joe Dispenza, all these people who are scientists who found out that even in their scientist mode, that they can help people, like the person with rheumatoid arthritis, with any kind of arthritis, they can help them release it by changing the frequency of what mindset they're in at the time. It's quite remarkable, but yet it's been going on since we were first created. We've always been a bundle of energy, and we're always been a container for the source.
Yeah, we have. And what possibilities, my goodness, such wonderful possibilities. You're not stuck being sick. The possibilities of you healing, and then the possibilities of what you'll accomplish once you're healed. Goodness, it's endless. I mean, like I never, even whenever I was in shape, I would have never attempted to do a triathlon. And now that I'm training for a triathlon, I'm like, so how long is an Ironman? How much longer is that? If I can do a triathlon, I'm pretty sure I can do an Ironman. You know?
Well, you go, girl, because I'm sure you can
are endless.
Yes, I'm totally convinced you can do it. All you have to do is just think about it.
Think about it and train, think about it and work towards, like you were saying, you can't just think about something and then it's going to just magically appear in front of you. But you can think about something and put forth different action steps, put it in action and work towards it. And then it'll just one day appear right in front of you. It'll seem like it did anyway.
Yes. And everybody will say, oh, she's just so lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, you've got a rainstorm cloud above you.
Right. Well, Miss Amy McGraw, this has been so delightful. I didn't know we were going to venture out into outer space a little bit, which was one of the subjects I love talking about. As I said earlier, there's people that have been who are in this sort of like visionary space that I've been running into lately, and I think we're doing a shift. I think the whole world, state, country is in for a shift. And I'm looking forward to that, where we're all friends together. We might not actually like each other that much, but we still have mutual respect. And because we're all part of the human race, what happens to one human happens to us all. So we can have that kind of collective goodwill wishes towards other people. And of course, it comes right back to us. Boom. So
thank you so much for having me.
Tell me about your upcoming summit that you have, that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, definitely. It's called The Great Awakening. How funny. That's a proper title, I think, for this discussion. But so from all of my discoveries, I'm just really wanting to wake people up to everything, So as I said earlier, I don't know if I mentioned it, but this is the theme. So the health of our physical body, right? Plus the purpose of our spiritual body, our mental body, equals the wealth and the abundance of our lives, which is why you can have someone who's in really, really good shape, but if they have poor mental, going on, they're just beating themselves up all the time. They're not really happy. You might think they are because they look great, but they're not. They have their other little things, and so it's just trying to teach people things that, like the energy work and how everyone's frequency, we're teaching people things that we're not necessarily taught in school. So the first day, everything starts with awareness. Everything starts with awareness. And then the second day, we're going to get into health. There's all different kinds of health modalities out there. Talking about frequency, did you know that there's literally a test that you can do? I told you this earlier, but to those on the podcast listening, there's literally a test that you can do where you could say, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And that's the test. And it measures the frequencies of your voice. And it's the most accurate test that I have ever taken, and that the people who have taken these tests have ever taken. It's crazy. And it has to do with frequencies. So we're going to be introducing all of these things to the world. We're also going to be introducing different generational wealth building strategies and new ways of having a business, which is, by hosting a podcast or having a summit, which is what I'm doing. Just things that you can teach people, because it's so much more rewarding to have a business where you're teaching others and you're helping others and everyone around you is leveling up. It's so much more rewarding than just going into a business and typing away at the computer. Even though you're doing the same thing, it's just so much more of a rewarding thing. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. And then from there, I'll be introducing my program, which is brand new. It's never been released, but it's completely geared towards healing people. So people who know for a fact that they are sensitive to their technology, but also people who have all these conditions. Like you said, some of their conditions have their own conditions and they just don't know what it is. Well, we're going to start with that voice frequency test, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to see exactly what's going on to where you will be able to heal. Like you said, everything kind of happens at the right time. I think it was from the Karate Kid, this quote that's, whenever the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And it's such a true statement. It's such a true statement. If you are relentless in your quest for healing, then you will be brought to all of your teachers that can help facilitate in that. So I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited to see the change that just next year will bring.
And for those of you who are listening, thank you so much for listening. And if you look underneath the show notes, it'll have a little bit about Amy McGraw's bio, some programs, and a way to get in touch with her. And if you also liked this program, leave some comments and follow. Also subscribe, because by subscribing, we reach more and more people. It's something to do with that YouTube algorithm. But thank you so much for listening today. And thank you so much, Amy, for joining me. It has been so delightful. And thank you, listeners, for joining in today.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.